My neighbor asked me, "Do you want to go on a picnic with me?" while her husband was away. The first time my neighbor asked, "Do you want to go on a picnic with me?" I laughed because I thought she was joking. The second time, she looked me straight in the eyes and quietly added, "while my husband is away." My smile disappeared. Every warning story I'd ever heard rushed through my head at once. Married woman, lonely neighborhood, curious eyes behind curtains. One wrong decision could ruin lives. I should have said no. Instead, I made the mistake of asking one question. Why me? She looked away, her hands trembling just enough for me to notice. Because you're the only person I trust. I wish I had walked back inside my house. My name is Ethan, and until 3 years ago, I believed neighbors should stay neighbors. No borrowing sugar. No sharing personal problems. No getting involved. Life had taught me that people often brought their storms to your doorstep, then disappeared while you cleaned up the mess. I was 34, worked from home as a graphic designer, and had moved into a quiet neighborhood outside Portland after my divorce. The neighborhood was peaceful. Kids rode bicycles in the evenings, elderly couples walked their dogs, and everyone waved politely without asking too many questions. That was exactly how I liked it. Then Olivia and Daniel moved into the house next door. Daniel was friendly. Too friendly. He loved talking over the fence while I watered my plants. Best decision we ever made. Fresh start. Olivia usually stood behind him, smiling politely, but saying very little. She had kind eyes. The kind that seemed to hide permanent sadness. I assumed she was simply shy. Over the next year, Daniel and I occasionally grilled burgers together, or watched football games in his garage. Olivia would bring lemonade before quietly disappearing back inside. I never thought much about it, until I started noticing small things. Daniel interrupted her constantly. He answered questions directed at her. If she laughed too loudly, he'd suddenly become silent. If another man spoke to her, he'd appear beside her within seconds. Nothing dramatic, just enough to make me uncomfortable. Still, appearances could be deceiving. I reminded myself that every marriage looked different from the outside. Then one rainy Tuesday morning, Daniel knocked on my door, carrying a suitcase. "Business trip," he said. 3 days in Seattle. Safe travels. He smiled. "If Olivia needs anything, keep an eye on the place?" Of course. It seemed like a normal request between neighbors. About an hour after his car disappeared, I heard another knock. Olivia stood on my porch, wearing jeans, sneakers, and a light blue sweater. She looked nervous. "Hi. Everything okay?" She nodded too quickly. She hesitated. "Do you want to go on a picnic with me?" I blinked. "A picnic?" She smiled weakly. "I know it sounds strange." Then she lowered her voice. "While my husband is away." Every alarm bell in my head started ringing. I don't think that's appropriate. I know how it sounds. Then why ask? She stared at the ground. "Because you're the only person I trust." I crossed my arms. "Olivia, if Daniel finds out..." "He won't. That's not the point." She looked like she wanted to cry. "It's not what you think." Then she whispered something that changed everything. "I just don't want to be alone today." Silence stretched between us. There was genuine fear in her voice. Not flirtation, not excitement. Fear. I finally sighed. "Public park." She looked confused. "If we go anywhere, it will be a public park, broad daylight. Nothing secret." For the first time since arriving, she smiled. "Thank you." We drove separately. She arrived carrying a small picnic basket. I brought bottled water, because I hadn't believed we'd actually stay long. Like your entire life belongs to someone else. I didn't answer. Instead, I waited. People reveal more when they aren't interrupted. Finally, she took a deep breath. When Daniel and I met, he was wonderful. She smiled sadly. He brought flowers every Friday. He remembered every little detail. He made me feel important. So what changed? Nothing. Then she corrected herself. Everything. She explained that after their wedding, Daniel slowly became controlling. First it was harmless. He wanted to know where she was, who she was texting, who she had lunch with. Then he insisted on handling all finances. He convinced her to quit her teaching job because his salary was enough. He installed security cameras around the house. He checked her phone every night. He says it's because he loves me. My stomach tightened. Does he ever hurt you? I asked. She hesitated. Not the way people imagine. Bruises weren't always visible. She continued. If dinner is late, he doesn't speak to me for days. If I disagree with him, he reminds me how much money he spends. If I visit my sister, he calls every 30 minutes. Why haven't you left? She laughed softly. Everyone asks that. No, they think they know. Her voice cracked. When someone slowly convinces you that you're worthless, eventually you believe them. Neither of us spoke for several minutes. Finally, she reached into the picnic basket. Instead of sandwiches, she pulled out a photo album. I wanted someone to see these. The pictures showed a completely different Olivia. Laughing, teaching children, camping, painting, traveling, alive. This was me. Then she pointed to herself in the present. I don't know who that woman is anymore. I didn't know what to say. Sometimes silence is kinder than empty advice. As the afternoon ended, she thanked me. For listening. Any time. No, she smiled. Not any time. I've already asked too much. When we returned home, everything seemed normal until 2 nights later. Around 11 o'clock, I heard shouting next door. Then something shattered. My heart started racing. I walked outside. The lights were on. The curtains were closed. Then I heard Olivia crying. I reached for my phone. Before I could call the police, the front door opened. Daniel stepped outside, smiling. His cheerful voice didn't match the screams I'd just heard. Everything okay? He laughed. Dropped a plate. Behind him, Olivia appeared. Her left cheek was slightly red. She smiled mechanically. We're fine. Our eyes met for 1 second. She wasn't asking for help. She was apologizing. The next morning, she slipped a folded note into my mailbox. It contained only 1 sentence. Thank you for believing me yesterday. A week passed, then another. We returned to being ordinary neighbors, or at least pretending to be. One Saturday afternoon, Daniel invited me over to watch a game. Halfway through the second quarter, he muted the television. You and Olivia had a picnic. It wasn't a question. I stayed calm. Yes. He stared at me. She said she felt lonely. And you believe that? I believed a neighbor wanted company. He leaned closer. Married women sometimes misunderstand kindness. I never gave her a reason to misunderstand. He smiled. But she asked you. There it was. Suspicion, possession, control. I met his eyes. If you're worried, talk to your wife. For a second I thought he might hit me. Instead he laughed. You seem like a decent guy. Then he turned the television back on. The conversation ended, but I knew it wasn't over. 3 days later, Olivia disappeared. No car, no lights, nothing. Daniel told everyone she'd gone to visit family. Something felt wrong. Then early Friday morning, someone knocked on my door. It was Olivia's older sister, Claire. Are you Ethan? Yes. She looked exhausted. Olivia told me about you. My stomach dropped. Is she okay? Claire nodded with tears in her eyes. She's safe. Relief washed over me. She finally left him. I invited Claire inside. She explained everything. Months before the picnic, Olivia had secretly contacted a domestic abuse support organization. They helped her create an escape plan. The picnic wasn't a date. It wasn't romance. It was a test. She needed to know whether at least one person nearby would believe her if she ever needed a witness. If you had treated her like she was flirting, Claire said quietly, she probably would have given up. I couldn't speak. Claire continued. That day in the park reminded her she wasn't crazy. Someone finally listened. A few weeks later, Daniel was served with divorce papers. He tried calling me repeatedly. I never answered. Rumors spread through the neighborhood. Some people claimed Olivia had cheated. Others insisted Daniel had been abandoned for no reason. I ignored them all. The truth doesn't always arrive before gossip. 6 months later, I received a handwritten letter. Inside was a photograph. Olivia stood in front of a classroom full of smiling children. She was teaching again. On the back she had written, "You didn't rescue me. You reminded me I deserved to rescue myself." That picnic wasn't about escaping my husband. It was about finding the courage to believe my own voice again. Thank you for listening when everyone else only looked. I still keep that picture in a drawer beside my desk. Not because I was some kind of hero. I wasn't. I didn't save anyone. I simply believed someone who was quietly asking for help. People often imagine life-changing moments as dramatic rescues or impossible sacrifices. Sometimes they are. But sometimes they begin with a strange invitation. Do you want to go on a picnic with me? It sounded like the beginning of a scandal. Instead, it became the beginning of someone's freedom. Whenever new neighbors move onto my street now, I still keep polite boundaries. I still believe privacy matters. But I've also learned something I'll never forget. Behind the neat lawns, fresh paint, and friendly smiles, people may be carrying battles no one else can see. And every once in a while, the kindest thing you can do isn't solve their problems. It's simply sit beside them on a blanket in a public park, listen without judging, and remind them, without even realizing it, that they are not alone. That single afternoon didn't change the world, but it changed one life.